Hello, everyone. Welcome to ModX Network Voices. This is Ryan Smith. I am joined by my partner in crime, Ivan Rupnik.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, everybody.
Thanks for coming again, Ivan, and joining us. Today, we have the opportunity to hear from another expert. This time, one of our like-minded professionals, an architect, John Moorfield. John, let's get you on the screen. Here we go. Hi, John. John is with Z Modular, but has quite a bit of experience and will be introducing himself, just some background for everyone. I met John, actually we figured it out back in our undergraduate Bachelor of Architecture program at the University of Arizona. So, you know, this community is very small when you think about it. We caught up again here in Washington when he was working with Jackson, Maine architects on some projects, Cubics projects with Next Gen Builders. And he is since been with Base 4 and now he's with ZMod. So John, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us your story, and we'll get into some discussion. Today's theme is what does it take, or what is the knowledge base that transfers or changes from being an architect and moving through and now working as a designer for a manufacturing firm of modules. So yeah, go ahead, John.
Great, thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you to Ryan and Ivan for kind of doing all this and putting these voices out. So yeah, I'm an architect here in Seattle, Washington. And about 5 years ago, I worked for just a small practice. There was 12 of us, Jackson, Maine Architecture, and a client had come to us asking about modular construction. And the principal there, Robin Murphy, had really been a proponent of modular design and construction for a long time. So it was a long time coming, and they said, I got this young guy who seems interested. We're going to throw him at the project and see what he does. And so it was just kind of all in. It was a very unique project. It was micro units. So each studio was 227 square feet for compact urban living. So it really fit modular well. It kind of had a small cellular nature. And so it had that design. And so through the process, working Gurdon Manufacturing built it. And the owner, Daniel Stoner and Cubics, at that point, they kind of were the GC and owner. So it really provided a great environment as a kind of an experimental test bed for not only the developer, but the architect, but the city as well. The city of Seattle had a previous modular project in a downtown urban core, but then it kind of, it had quieted off, you know, nobody was kind of following that up. And so we were blazing kind of a new trail with the permit inspections and all of that. And so, you know, what we didn't know could fit in a dump truck, you know, when we actually got through it. I remember many moments that, you know, after pouring through the drawings for over 2 years, finally setting the boxes and looking up and going, oh yeah, that, oops, didn't see that one. But it really kind of ignited my passion as an architect, understanding all the pieces and the process to deliver a building with modular construction. So I worked with Jackson, Maine for about 5.5 years, delivered 2 modular projects with them. Did kind of research on countless others and about a lot of kind of evangelizing of that. Last September, I decided it was time to kind of broaden my horizons and left to start my own company, Lift Architecture and Research, which was, as it was, you know, was supposed to be, you know, architecture focused and research focused. We're going to try to split half and half. About 3 weeks into starting Lift, I was acquired. The company was acquired by Base 4 Architecture. And they were a kind of global design firm that also had the passion for modular design, but had kind of a global reach and a global team that could really kind of provide the horsepower for my, at the time, one-man show. So I worked with them for a couple months. It was fantastic collaboration. Through them, my #1 client was Z Modular. And so they kind of had introduced me as this architect in Seattle that's, you know, kind of knows architecture and is really passionate about modular design. So I fit well with the Z team. The pandemic hit, Base 4 was hit pretty hard as they design a lot of hospitality. And so as they kind of contracted slightly, I ended up shifting to the Z Modular team full time. So now I work directly with Z Modular. And our office is based in Troy, Michigan, and we also have an office in Toronto. We have manufacturing facilities in Kitchener in Canada, and Killeen, Texas, and Chandler, Arizona, which is coming online. So Z Modular, if anyone doesn't know, does steel. They are a subsidiary of Zeckelman Industries, the North America's largest tube steel manufacturer. And they use the proprietary vector block system, which is kind of a cast and milled 3-corner block. If you imagine the old erector sets, it's the circle with the holes in it. That's the vector block for the modular construction. So yeah, that working directly for the manufacturer. I am in the architecture and design department. We have an engineering department, and kind of everybody through the factory. So that's kind of my long arc. But as an architect, it was, how do I kind of build more modular projects? I'm really passionate about them. I think they're a fantastic way forward for the future of our industry. I think they're going to play a large, factory built construction is going to play a large role in kind of the future of construction and design delivery of buildings. And so I just kind of kept digging through this rabbit hole and eventually ended up at a very like-minded location and manufacturer, focusing on some very innovative things and procedures. And Z Modular is very focused and currently on automation. And so how automation can play a role in the fabrication and even design. So using automated design and automated fabrication hand in hand to kind of help deliver those promises of modular, faster, better, greener.
That's really good to hear. Thank you for the introduction, John, and that helps us to understand where you've come from and currently what you're up against there at Z Modular. And when you made that transition from the time of being with Jackson, Maine, and working on lightwood frame modular, and really, as you said, cutting your teeth and learning all those a dump truck full of lessons, really, that you could take forward in your career. And it seems that, and Ivan and I have found in these interviews with architects in this series and over our careers, we've found that tends to be the lesson, that you start out a little bit naive, and then and let's be honest, our discipline of architecture is a bit elitist. We think we know more than we do, and you start to get into a deep topic like manufacturing, and all of a sudden there's a whole new vocabulary, there's a whole new business model, there's a whole new a way of thinking about design as a product platform as opposed to design of a project. So let's unpack some of those things, and you could talk to some of the things I talked about, but don't want to put words in your mouth. What have you learned since now going through that process of Jackson, Maine, Base 4, and now Z Modular? And how has your approach to design changed necessarily because of embracing modular construction? How do you operate as an architect now versus before?
Yeah, I think every time I design a project now or go or work through a project, I really focus on all the voices that I have heard through my experience. Whereas it used to be designing the building, and you were thinking about the context and the neighborhood and the space, and it was really, you and the paper and the project, kind of working their way out, and your team and the project owner, and the design was this process. And it was kind of you and them and you and the project working together. And now I've added so many more voices to my mind and to my experience. I remember a time walking through the metric modular plant when one of my projects up in Canada. And I was walking through and I had a hard hat on, and I didn't have a name on it. And I was asking a bunch of questions, and somebody a framer was grumbling about something. And I said, you know, what's going on? And he's like, this building just isn't modular friendly. And I was like, really? I'm the architect. I drew this. I spent over a year trying to make it modular friendly. What did I do wrong? And he kind of was like, you know, was taken back, like, oh, I didn't mean to upset you. I'm like, no, seriously. And we sat down on the, you know, on the framing, and he talked me through, literally, the man holding the nail gun, how his job was easier or harder because of my design.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's great.
And it's that voice right there that I think of when I'm working and designing and executing, you know, because I think, you know, all architects are always like, you know, here's this much of the project, this is the fun stuff and the design, and then there's the execution. And, you know, if you want to become a modular specific architect, I would say if this stuff, the meat, the execution, the getting the building up in the air, if that's where you really find yourself passionate, and you find yourself asking more and more and more, and not saying, if you find yourself asking more questions and not saying, oh, that's out of my scope, that's out of my scope. If you're the guy that says, I can learn more about that scope, I can help that scope, my voice can be added to the plumbing conversation, the architectural voice can be added to the structural conversation, the manufacturing voice and the structural voice and the architectural voice should all be part of this. If that's what you feel the collaborative environment should be, then modular architecture and modular design is for you. If you just want to kind of say, like, I do my scope and I'm, you know, this is what I do and you do your thing, then it probably isn't going to work. So I think that's the biggest thing that's changed is I know more about plumbing fittings and electrical design and mechanical design and structural design than I ever thought. And I really enjoy that, you know, like I don't, you know, I'm not a designer of these things. I'm kind of 5 miles wide, you know, 1 inch deep on these things. But I'm not afraid to kind of deep dive and say, why is that plumbing thing, plumbing design, you know, clashing with structure? How can we design better? Because then, you know, I've seen a plumbing design move a building. You know, I've literally seen a toilet and a plumbing code in a specific jurisdiction not work for the design that literally ripple effects the entire building, moved the building, to change the design of the building because of one line in a plumbing code. And so taking that forward, your experience, knowing that that one line in the plumbing code is out there and it will change the way you think, is kind of, you know, that's really what I enjoy most.
John, you've had a really unique experience, as you've described, and 4 companies in 5 years sounds like, which is a lot of learning. It's like a graduate program or a doctorate in modular, but for real. And so it's really interesting. And even the trajectory, it follows the appearance of the McKinsey report, the MBI changes. So it's like, it's really a kind of historical moment. And so it's really interesting to see, you know, you really like a canary in the coal mine in a way, in terms of how architects particularly engage with what is a new, but also an old system. So I guess, you know, it's interesting. We've been talking to manufacturers in the US a lot and in Canada, and it met like Metric Modular, who you worked with. And often 1 of 2 things we hear from them, which are a little bit contradictory, is what we hear, what you just brought up from your framer experience, which is that architects make modular unfriendly buildings. And we tend to agree because of the way that the manufacturing process is set up in these factories. Some projects don't make sense in the way that manufacturing process is set up. But then we also hear, when we show them work from Sweden, Japan, even some of the new systems that are popping up in the panelized side of the industry, like in Katera and Bensonwood, we also see that those same manufacturers see those projects and say, oh, those are too standardized for the clients that we work with. So we get a strange, we get a little bit of a weird combination of comments where, oh, you know, architects make things that are too, or even developers want things that are too customized for modular as we understand it. On the other hand, modular manufacturers are worried about their product being too standard and not customizable enough for the market. And one of our hunches is a little bit to do with that we lack product platforms in the industry. We lack a kind of interface between project demands and the manufacturing space, a kind of game board, if you will.
Mhm.
But I mean, I would like to know, like, as someone who's now working more, like you've come from the outside in. You've literally gone from,
Yeah.
let's say, an architecture office with an interest in modular to an architecture office that specializes in modular, now to working with a modular manufacturer. Do you see what do you see as the role of design, and where is design? Is design happening more? Should it be happening more in terms of within a manufacturer? Should architecture offices have a dedicated modular guy or gal or team? Where is design going to be now, and maybe in 5 to 10 years in the U.S. context, knowing that we have a very particular, somewhat fragmented but fairly large industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go to school, you're taught principles of design, and you go through your thesis, and you're speaking of big kind of very ephemeral, qualities of space and light. And then you land out in a first job, and some old salty guy comes up to you and says, forget everything you know about design, bang, here's the building code. And you're like, oh man, and there's that kind of hump you have to get over, that now there's this set of rules in your way of design, and it's the building code and the land use code. And then, you look at great pieces of architecture and great jaw-dropping, award-winning designs in your city and around the world. And they were all built to code. They were all built within those parameters. There is bad buildings and amazing buildings, all built within the same parameters, same structural code. They didn't get to break them. They may have had exceptions, but like, they utilize those parameters in such a creative and eloquent way to produce something that was available to all. That building was, and that design is accessible to all. It just took the right skill set of the right team to design it, envision it, and execute it. And so I think that's what modular is now, is that modular brings a whole different level of parameters. And we've got all these factories that, we say like, oh, this factory does it this way, this factory does it this way. It really is, there's not that many parameters between the factories. There is, we all mostly speak a Romance language.
Yeah.
We have the same roots.
Yeah.
We just have different,
it is Portuguese and
conjugations.
Spanish.
It's exactly, it's vosotros. It's not that different.
Do you think factories are good? So we all agree, I think, that modular manufacturers to 200, particularly, let's say, even in the light wood frame space, which is a little bit more similar than, I think steel has uniqueness and the scale of the project and code is a little different. But let's say in the light wood frame space, I think the three of us would agree that there's more similarity than difference. And yet, do you think that manufacturers are good at explaining what their needs to architects? I know architects, we can agree, are not always good at listening to what the manufacturer's parameters are. But do you think the manufacturers in general are good or even capable of explaining those key parameters to clients and to architects?
No. And it's because they're, in the chicken and the egg scenario, the factories are typically in the back seat, right, saying no more than they're saying yes. A project is arriving to them in a stage of completion, and they're presented with, I hate the word, but I use it all the time, can you modularize this? And we, and those of us in the modular industry who've executed projects, we universally will say, when do you get the factory involved? As soon as possible. No one says as late as possible. We all understand that. And so, but then, then there's so many different factories, and there's, do you bring a certain factory involved in early? And that means that they get the job, because there is skin in the game, that they want to win the job. They want to deliver the product. And so there's that kind of push-pull of, well, we want competitive pricing, we want to get the best, when really it's all about making the right team. You make the right team, you make the right project. I think I'm speculating, and I'd love to hear from somebody like my co-chair of a nonprofit group I work with, Justin Stewart of Synergy Construction, and now Synergy Modular. We've been asking these questions like, is the delta between factories different than the delta a project can save by having an integrated design team? You know, can you just say, here's the team, let's design a better product,
Right.
and get that cost savings, versus let's make everybody compete to the bottom?
Right.
You know, like, I can't say, you know, that. I'd love to know the answer. So if you know anybody who loves research and those kind of things, I would implore you to find those people. But you know, that I think, yeah. So at that kind of that level, I think that's where, you know, we're seeing factories such as Katera and Z Modular and others producing kind of catalog parts that, you know, we are producing. I know at Z Modular and Katera, like at Z, we are producing platforms, you know, that we will then say, okay, if you have a need, here's a platform where, you know, you can design a multifamily structure, a student housing structure, a walk-up garden style apartment structure. And an owner can come to us and say, you know, less like, oh, I want to design it from scratch. It's just like, here's where we can deliver for this cost, this price, and this time. And when you get down to it, you know, I think some people say, well, oh, my demographic is unique. You know, my occupants, or, you know, my tenants really decide blah, 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 you know, this small thing or that small thing. And I remember talking to an actual property manager who was involved in leasing, and they had two kind of mega 300 unit structures within blocks of each other, same region. And they said, well, this one is, they're going to deliver at the same time, and this one is going to lease up faster than this one. And I said, why? You know, is it the cost of profit? You know, what is the X factor? Are these designed better? Is it the square footage of the units? He's like, no, they're pretty much the same. They're all market, you know. But this one has a dog run, and people have a lot of dogs, and so it's going to lease up faster. That's it. He's like, yeah, that's it. Like, when people, you know, like, if it's comparable in the neighborhood and the rent is $100 less or $50 less, and or parking is included, like all these kind of small things, or dog run, is it that much of a difference? So I meet, you know, people who say, well, modular design puts me too much in a box. And I've said, okay, well, how about this? And let's think in a 10-year span. We can design, you know, 3 projects for you, bespoke, one-off modular projects in a 10-year span. Or we can save 20 to 25% of the time in each one of those projects. And maybe we can deliver 5 projects in a 10-year span, or 6. So from your portfolio standpoint, and we have a housing crisis, so we need to getting more quality housing online faster. With factory built construction, we can simultaneously increase the quality and speed faster than the, you know, the standard stick built construction world can. The stick built construction cannot definitively say we can go faster and build better. I'd love to see it, but I think the modular industry has a moment to say we actually can increase quality and speed at the same time, but here's what we need to actually accomplish that. So I think that's what I say to kind of developers or architects that say, you know, we're designed in a box and we can't really do anything. And also to anybody who is an architect who thinks that modular design does put you in a box and they all look the same, and there's just all these restrictions. I would say Google David Baker Architects, go right through their projects, see they're all electric buildings, modular construction, and that case is over. Those guys are doing fantastic, wonderful, beautiful work.
But it's a focus on quality instead of just variety for variety's sake. And I think that's a bigger U.S. architecture issue, is that we are trained not to make better buildings, but to make buildings that look different from other buildings. That's a flaw in us as academics, and we're happy to try to fix that. But I think, I mean, it's a developer issue too, though, is developers also want to distinguish themselves in the marketplace in different ways.
Yeah, I sit on the Seattle Design Review Board as well, and so I play that hat as well. That and I've made the joke, well, I would hate to be the developer that brings the third modular platform project to a design review board, because they're like, oh yeah, we've seen that one, we've seen the green one, we've seen the red one, and now you're going to bring the blue one. No, so I understand that. I'd love to be in that problem, to say we've seen so many of these modular projects in our neighborhood, please make this one look different. So I will reserve that comment until there's so much modular multifamily going on in my city that I can say, that's it, they all look the same.
Yeah, the irony is you go around the United States to mid to large urban cities, and lightwood platform frame housing kind of all looks pretty similar, actually, regardless of it. That's right. Already. So I want to just ask a follow-up question here, and I think in the interest of time, it's probably our last question, John. Unless Ivan's got another one, that's okay. This question digs a little bit deeper. You mentioned that there really is a different design approach, and because of your journey, really is a different design approach from thinking about it at a project level and a very global level as an architect. And those are important things to think about, absolutely. So I'm not trying to downplay that for our audience. We need to respond to urban contexts. We need to think about the people and how they're going to be occupying these spaces. Those are absolutely critical things that we continue to need to think about as architects. But as we transition to think about manufacturing, there's things like design for manufacture assembly. There are things that you might attribute more to industrial design or product design than you would to, say, architecture as a discipline. And so I just wanted to ask you, could you give us some ideas of things that you have learned? What do you have to think about as an industrial designer or product designer coming at it from an architectural perspective that you may not have first anticipated? Is it detail? Is it scale? Is it, what is it? You've talked about the cultural aspect, the coordination and listening to voices. That's one aspect. Are there other sort of technical things that you think that would be important that architects be aware of as they get into this space, or as they transition to working for manufacturers, which is inevitably going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's listening to those voices, because when you listen to, or when you speak to people working in the factory, changing a wall in a small length may not have a large, kind of big impact on your design, but over scale, it may have a very large impact on the factory and the production. And, going from 9-foot ceilings to 8'4" ceilings or something like that, so you can save 1-2 sheets of drywall, or, building within the modular parameters of the materials, or kind of, like you said, design for manufacturing and assembly. There's design for urban context, and there's design for occupants, and there's design for manufacturing. It's another client that you have the opportunity to design for. And if you start designing for factory and manufacturing, just one more level of kind of complexity and real beauty that you can imbue into your project. And I think, when you see a project that really kind of responds contextually to its urban fabric, as a person who views that, who doesn't know anything about the project, you can understand how that, responds to the context. And so maybe no one walking down the street will actually fully understand how beautiful that project went through the factory. But if there's more housing in their neighborhood, because that project was designed for manufacturing and assembly more efficient, then they will realize the beauty of that kind of succinct design, because there'll just be more people in their neighborhood to enjoy it.
Yeah. Ivan, do you have any follow-up questions to that, or? Yeah.
maybe maybe a close another. We've discussed a lot of what. I mean, honestly, not to make it a Z modular advertisement, but I think it's very interesting because it's a unique company. You are, and I think, is there anything else, just again, that you can think of? You worked in conventional, you worked as an architect in modular, you worked for an architect that works in modular, and now you're really working with a pretty unique manufacturer that has a standardized connection, which isn't typical, has multiple factories, not typical, has you working for them, not typical. Anything else that really sets, and you're a critical objective guy, anything else that really is different about your experiences in this new framework that you want to share with the audience?
I believe we have just started to scratch the possibilities of building information modeling. I think what we can actually start doing, you see a lot of people talking about digital twins and LOD 400 and LOD 500, level of design 500. So like we get these, I've seen where as architects crafting the digital model, I think it's fascinating that we're moving to digital delivery. And so the way we deliver drawings is dramatically different. And the pandemic has actually shown this as well. Like building departments that were set up for digital delivery were able to continue to move forward. And you can just email a PDF and they will review it. And your permits can keep moving versus delivering paper. And when we're starting to see that there may be a day where our construction documents are the digital model. We may deliver a Revit model or an integrated BIM model as the construction documents, as the actual building tool to not only the construction, but and then we can hand it to the general contractor and the manufacturer and the owner and the city for review. And so I think that's where kind of I'm excited to see kind of where our industry is going from a factory build perspective, and then kind of merging of this passion of architects and building information modeling. I mean, a lot of factories are still using AutoCAD. They eventually go down to that. And so seeing that kind of three-dimensional digital delivery moving into the factory and how a factory can use that, I think is going to be very, very exciting. And I know, Z Modular, for our automation, physical automation, is also investing heavily in that kind of digital automation and digital delivery, and what can we actually really do with those digital assets.
Great. That's really helpful, John. I want to close this out by just making a succinct comment or observation of what you have talked about. And that is, your last comment was about technology. And yet you started this conversation when we were asking what's changed for you, what's different. You talked all about process and culture, right? And what we have found in these interviews is that it continues to come back to, if you don't change your culture, you're not going to change anything in this.
Technology's not going to save you.
Yeah, it's not going to save you. And in fact, you should work on the culture and the process first, and then let technology augment that, right? And let it fill that.
Yes.
We've seen that abroad. We're seeing that now in the United States and Canada as these factories get going. And so I just wanted to reiterate that the role of the architect as a cultural purveyor, that is one that values the social interaction and the cultural aspects of projects, could bring great value to factories as we enter in this brave new world. Manufactured approaches to design, modular, industrialized construction, panelized construction, is presenting a new business model, a new opportunity for architects to step in to a role perhaps that they didn't initially think that they would ever step into, but now business models are changing, the climate is changing, and we need to fully embrace this. I want to welcome and thank John for joining us today. Appreciate your input and hope to see you again. on a Modex network.
Absolutely.
Voices. Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you.